Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am the Omni viewer, and while I'm working on other videos that are properly edited, I thought I'd show you some of the Kaiju collectibles I acquired over the last month and even while I was sick. 'Cause, just thought I'd share it with you, and some of these figures have actually proven to be maybe a little bit controversial in some parts. You'll find out soon enough, but first things first. So to kick things off, we've got the Bandai Movie Monster Series Dream Box for Godzilla, which of course everybody loves the art that's on the box itself. Who wouldn't? But this isn't about the box, it's about what's in the box. And in that box are Movie Monster vinyl figures of the original Showa King Ghidorah, the original Showa MechaGodzilla, the original Showa Kamacuras, not the original Anguirus, but the one from the Showa 60s era, and Gabara. In fact, I don't think Gabara and Kamacuras have gotten vinyl figures before, at least not from Bandai, though correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes I am. But these are figures, of course, that are being vinyl figures. They're going to have the limited articulation, but Bandai's usually been pretty good with detail on these things, or at least they used to be. Things have been a little more hit or miss with recent figures. So how do these ones shape up? Well, Anguirus here looks pretty good overall. The spikes on his carapace are kind of three-sided almost, if you look at them close enough. Some of them are anyway, some of them are four-sided, and they all appear to be swept back a little rather than straight, but they still look good overall. He's got the accurate detail in the face. I noticed that the back legs, of course, being a man in a suit in this time period, he has the Kaiju crawl. But I noticed that the feet here are completely faced upward. Whereas with other Suitmation style Anguiruses that have gotten figures, the feet are more poised like he's ready to go. You can see here with Final Wars Anguirus, that's how his feet look, and the actual original Anguirus, that's how his feet look. Side note, you know how this Anguirus and the Raids Again Godzilla are painted in this monochrome gray to kind of look like it's a black and white movie? But the inside of his mouth is red. So this isn't a black and white figure, this is actually his color. But that's beside the point. So that's a different little detail for Anguirus, and his tail isn't quite as long as I would expect. But if I understand correctly, this is technically a reissue of an earlier figure. So all in all, I would say that considering Showa Anguirus figures, particularly 60s Showa Anguirus, are so rare, this reissue is a pretty nice one to add to the collection. King Ghidorah here is the biggest one of the bunch. And again, we have some good detail, a nice shiny gold. One detail I certainly appreciate is that the wing membranes do not end with a flat edge. They are tapered. There are some Bandai Kaiju figures like Fire Rodan that just sort of have a flat edge to the wing, and I'm glad that they retained the tapered edge with this guy. Promo photos, you'll see that the heads are spread apart. This one, when he came out of the box, they were all bunched together, and they've only kind of spread on their own. But a little manipulation would probably fix that easily enough. Only 2 points of articulation are his legs, but detail on him is pretty good as well. Now when it comes to the newbies, Kamacuras and Gabara, Kamacuras overall looks good, although his feet, as I'm sure you can see, don't all quite rest flat on the ground, which, isn't so much of an issue because he is still properly balanced. And only points of articulation are his arms, which move in this kind of direction. So not much in the way of posing. Oh, his head moves too. Don't want to get that wrong. But, overall, detail's not bad. The paint on the wings is really good, with the alternating black and red. But, he's definitely one of the better examples. And Gabara here, Gabara's got one open hand and one black power fist. and that's the only articulation he's got. Can't turn at the hip because there's not even a joint there, can't move his legs. The overall impression is that he looks fairly seamless aside from the arms. Hair detail looks good, as does the horn. And, you know, considering Gabara is one of the more infamous monsters from one of the more infamous Godzilla movies, it's kind of amazing he even got a figure. And overall, not bad. From what I've seen, though, MechaGodzilla is the figure that people are the most negative about. And the original MechaGodzilla is my favorite design of the bunch, but a lot of people are saying this MechaGodzilla didn't quite stick the landing. Well, let's see if we can figure out what they mean, because at a glance, this figure looks just fine, right? It doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with it. Let's put it next to this earlier Bandai MechaGodzilla vinyl figure. This is a Bandai USA one, actually. As I'm sure you can see, there actually is a pretty stark contrast here. Setting aside the fact that the arms are positioned a little differently, look at this original MechaGodzilla. The color has a bit more dimension to it. He's solid silver most of the way, but there's a bit more, like, gradient to it, where it's darker in some areas. And that might also be enhanced by the fact that the surface is not pristine. There are ripples and dents. It looks like this MechaGodzilla has been in a fight. And of course we have the little splashes of color like the MG on the arm, the lights here on his cheekbones, I guess you would call them, if they were bones, the orange of his eyes. This is a visually interesting MechaGodzilla, as compared to this one, which is not as visually interesting. The silver color is much flatter, for one thing, and his surface is just too smooth. This is a MechaGodzilla that's fresh out of the factory, as opposed to this one. And the other colors, like the dot here, the eye, MG on the arms, they're a bit darker and not as rich, not as bright. So, yeah, I can see what people are saying. It's not that this is a bad figure, mind you. This is actually a very well-made figure. But it looks too pristine as compared to the visually interesting MechaGodzilla figure that they released before. Of course, this one's not available anymore, at least not for a reasonable price. Speaking of reasonable price, of course, the Dream Box is incredibly expensive, so I'm sure part of that at least went to the art on the box. But, you know, prices are up on a lot of things these days. Overall, though, I had pre-ordered this, and, you know, even though I understand where people are coming from with their critiques of MechaGodzilla, overall, I wouldn't say I'm disappointed. Because, you know, we got a figure that doesn't really come along anymore, two of them actually, two figures that don't really come along anymore, two figures that I'm pretty sure have never existed before, and sure, MechaGodzilla is a little too clean, but 4 out of 5 is still pretty good if you ask me, so I'm not disappointed in this. Now let's move on to something a bit more unusual. Maybe you've been looking around on Amazon or eBay for articulated kaiju figures at one point, and you came across this guy, and you were wondering, what's the deal here? This looks like the Ready Player One MechaGodzilla, but there weren't any official figures of that. Although the design isn't quite an exact match. And just to make matters even more confusing, the box features art from Godzilla vs. MechaGodzilla 2, but if you turn it around, this little blurb describes the plot for Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. And it's not even listed on most sites as MechaGodzilla, it's usually MechaGodzilla, or something like that. Two separate words, and not even the full name. So what's the deal here? I don't 100% know. I did hear one theory that this did start out as an official Ready Player One MechaGodzilla that would have been made by a company like NECA, perhaps, but the license never worked out, so the design might have been possibly deliberately leaked to a company that could change the design around a little bit and then produce essentially a bootleg. And make no mistake, this is a bootleg. I don't know if that's the truth, but I do know that for a bootleg, this figure's pretty solid. Literally in fact, because it's pretty heavy. And it's got pretty good articulation. You know, the arms, that you can turn the wrists, which also bend back and forth, elbows. The legs have articulation all the way down. You have jaw, you can turn the head, the neck, the upper torso. The only place there's limited articulation is the tail, which kind of rotates at the base and about midway down. But overall production and detail is really good on this thing. Now, when it arrived, I was initially worried because I got the box out of the mail and I heard a rattling noise. And I was worried that it had broken somewhere in transit. Turns out it was just because the rockets right here, they come detached, as you can see. If you look here, there's a little peg, there's the matching hole. They were detached and they were just loose in the box. And the tail was also loose. The tail actually took a lot of work to get in. I had to do the hairdryer trick, but it did eventually work. So I'm happy to say the figure arrived in good condition. I'm of course going to be very, very careful with this guy. But it's also one of the bigger articulated kaiju figures. Just to give you an idea of scale, here's the 6-inch tall Shin Ultraman figure produced by Fig Zero. And here is the Hayatoy's Monsterverse Godzilla. You can see he's actually a little bit taller than Godzilla. Only a smidge, but significantly so. So this is a really big figure. And it looks really good alongside other articulated figures. Now, it's not going to be cheap, of course, but if you can track one down, and if the price is reasonable enough, or if you determine the price is something you're just willing to pay, this actually is a pretty good collection to that, not good collection to the edition, good addition to the collection. And hey, we don't have a MonsterVerse MechaGodzilla yet from Haya, so this is the next best thing. Last but certainly not least, we have a Playmates drownviper. These, for some reason, are very hard to find. It seems like any time Playmates releases a MonsterVerse figure that's not Godzilla or Kong, I mean, even those disappear sometimes, but the ones that are like this, they tend to disappear quickly. I still have never seen a Warbat figure in the wild. And I didn't think I was going to see a drownviper either. I was almost ready to pay the scalping price on Amazon, but I went out, I made a quick trip to Target just to see. There it was. My patience was rewarded. And the first thing I will say about the drownviper figure is that it's surprisingly heavy. I know it just looks like a snake, but it's a very heavy, very solid figure. much more than I expected. The only other Playmates figure that is heavier are the Kong figures, because they're pretty solid too. Although, yeah, the drownviper is actually heavier now that I compare them. And it's got loads of articulation, as you can see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 joints along the body, plus you have the jaw. And they advertise that the head can pop off, because, you know, Kong decapitates this thing in the movie. There's no, like, blood effect or anything, as you can see. But the head pops on and off pretty easily. And you can pose this guy so many different ways. Of course, since he goes after Kong, the constricting, looks like the tail can pop off as well. So that's something to keep in mind. These are all just ball and socket joints. You got to be careful. But you can do a pretty dynamic pose here, having this guy trying to strangle the eighth wonder of the world. Here, let me raise the camera a little, give you a better shot of that. There you go, see? Not bad. As far as detail goes, it looks pretty accurate, although if you look inside the mouth here, it doesn't have the barbed tongue that it does in the movie, although I guess that would have been a little hard to do for a figure like this. But overall, if you can find one, it's not a bad addition, like I said. And as we can also see, you can pose it a fairly good number of ways, although you're only going to get so many of them. There is kind of a pose built into the sculpt. So as you can see, I've been pretty busy with my collecting. I don't know if I should be, but I have been. And my overall thoughts would be, yes, the Dream Box is overpriced, but the figures, for the most part, are good, and the MechaGodzilla, it is what it is. This bootleg MechaGodzilla is way better than I expected a bootleg to be. The drownviper is much heavier than I expected it to be, but overall it's pretty good in terms of what Playmates has been doing with Kaiju figures. So there you have it. That's what I've been up to with my collecting, and you know, if you guys got these figures, what do you think? Do you think this MechaGodzilla is disappointing? Have you seen a drownviper anywhere? Do you know the true story behind this thing? Feel free to leave any comments down below. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.